this one. I wanted to quickly go over the legislative process because, as Rep. Doherty was saying, the legislative process isn't straightforward. It doesn't happen quickly, and it doesn't happen easily. We have a 2-year session here in Massachusetts where formal sessions end July of next year, 2022. And that basically means that if it's controversial and requires a roll call vote, it needs to be done by then. We have over 6,000 bills that have been filed, and of these, roughly 10% will pass into law. And of that 10%, the vast majority, probably 90%, are things that do something like provide a sick leave bank to an individual, name a bridge after someone, provide an additional liquor license in a community. So the actual number of substantive bills is very small that gets passed in a year. And that's why advocacy and making sure that our voice and the issue is heard is so important. The bill will be moved through a committee process that the legislature is actually technically they've established their committees, but they're still working on their rules, which has slowed things down a little. But this bill will likely be reported to the Committee on Public Service, and it will have at some point, hopefully soon, a hearing, a public hearing where people can submit written testimony. And at least back in the good old days, they could come in to the State House and they could provide oral testimony as well. We'll see exactly what the format of that is. One of the things, as I mentioned, we're pushing to move this bill as quickly as possible, and that's at multiple levels. And the first push is to get the hearing as soon as possible. But traditionally, these have happened anytime between the spring of the first year of the session and the fall of the first year of the session. Sometimes they go longer, but not usually in general. And action needs to be taken by February 2nd. And there's a whole bunch of different pieces of action that go out there, and I just want to tell people. One is an extension order that would extend that deadline. The other is the worst, and that is that the committee reports a bill ought not to pass, and that's certainly something we're trying not to have happen. The next is that the bill would be sent to a study order, which is, I would call, the second worst. It's basically grouped together in a manila folder and sent off to the Rules Committee, where they 9 times or 99 times out of 100, they stay there. And then the thing we're pushing for is that the committee recommends that the bill ought to pass, and they can do that with or without an amendment or amendments. And amendments are really important to watch, and because a bill can move out of committee and look substantial with a favorable report and look substantially different than it did when it came in. So one of the things that I've been mentioning in conversations with other members is that when we talk about the bill, we talk about it as drafted today. We have no way of knowing what the twists and turns of the legislative process, where they will lead us, and what this bill will look like. It provides us with opportunities perhaps to improve the bill, but it also provides people who don't want to do the bill in one way, shape, or form to amend it, and and to in some ways sometimes try to amend it in a negative way. So we would certainly be fighting to make sure that those changes don't happen. The next process, it would go to another committee, and then off to making it through that hurdle would go off to the floor of either the House or Senate, go back and forth between those two branches, and then it goes off to the governor's desk where he can sign the bill. Ideally, he can amend the bill, or he can veto the bill. And obviously, we will be advocating for him to sign the bill when it makes it that far. The background of the bill, this bill is based on the last teacher retirement bill to be signed into law, which was back in June of 1993. And MTA's government relations team, as well as MTA Legal, Senator Vilas and his staff, and Rep. Doherty and her staff have been working hard on trying to come up with language that addresses the concerns of our members in a way that we think makes sense. And but one of the things that we are aware of is that there's always the opportunity to have a change that's positive. So if there's something that needs to be changed, we aren't locked in necessarily to specific language, but we are locked in, I think, to the intent of this bill. And if there's another way to do it, we'd certainly be willing to talk with people about that. But we think that this is really built on a solid premise, and we look forward to working with the legislature on it. The most common question we get from people is, am I eligible? Does this impact me? So what do you need to be eligible for this bill? You need a couple of things. You need to be a member of the Massachusetts Teacher Retirement System, which in Massachusetts means that you are a teacher in a public school other than in the city of Boston. The MTRS is the governmental authority that administers the retirement system in Massachusetts for all schools other than all public schools other than the city of Boston. It's important to note too that the MTRS didn't write this bill or file it. That was done by us, the MTA, and there's often confusion between the two. So I just want to make that clear. The second piece of the puzzle that you must, or the second box you must check, is you must be currently today, or the day that you put in your application, obviously, eligible to retire. And what does that mean? It means if you were hired before April 2nd of 2012, you're 55 years of age or older with 10 years of service or more, or you have 20 years of service outright. If you were hired after April 2nd, 2022, you need to be 60 years old with 10 years or more of service. So one of the provisions in the bill that was filed in 1993 was a local option. This bill contains a local option as well, but it's for different reasons. Our bill requires that there be a mandatory backfilling of teaching positions for teachers who retire under this bill. So we wanted to make sure and ensure that we are not destabilizing our teaching workforce, increasing class size. So there are a couple of requirements that that need to be done for this to happen. One is that the school committee needs to approve the proposal, and its governing body needs to approve it as well. So approve the bill. Included in that vote is a plan to backfill any vacancies created as a result of this bill. This provision was included, as I mentioned, to avoid teacher shortages and increasing class size. If the district fails to meet this obligation, it's required to pay the cost of service of purchase service or age, and that cost would be deducted from their Chapter 70 funds. Now, obviously, there's a cost savings in this for the school districts. They're allowing people who are, at the upper end of step scales to retire and are likely to replace them with people at the low end. And so there's real money there in the cost savings for those people. And that is the incentive for the district. And I think they're well aware of that incentive. There is a carve out for districts facing declining enrollment that it permits them to forego the backfilling of vacancies if no negative impact on class size or educational programs would be realized because of that reduction. So the second, or perhaps the most common and most confusing piece of this, is the purchase. And what is it that I can buy and how can I buy it, and things along those sides. So I'm sure that there'll be additional questions, but the bill allows for up to 5 years of service or up to 5 years of age. So neither of those change in any of the second caveat, or a combination of the two not to exceed 10. So what we're talking about there is really dividing, not a year, when you work a year in a school, you've aged a year and you've earned a year of service, and you think of that as 1 year. Well, actually, in the world of retirement, that's 2 years. That's a year of credible service, and that's a year of age. So think of it that way. So when we're talking about 10 years, we're talking about 5 years of service. 5 years of service and age. The Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission, PERAC as it's known, would be tasked with calculating the cost of the purchase for a purchase of years or age or service. And PERAC is the governmental body in charge of overseeing the 104 Massachusetts public pension systems, including the MTRS. They're the ones that have the actuaries, they're the ones that crunch the numbers in all different ways for all different reasons. And the MTRS is the one that administers, as I mentioned, the plan, and they're the ones that would come up with the specifics around how a buyback would run. What, generally speaking, it's in one lump sum, or they create a payment plan for people to do it over some sort of time. That would be, subject to some discussion, but it's something that they're familiar with. The bill also allows the employers or the state to voluntarily pay some or all of the cost to purchase service. So while the way the bill is written has the employee paying this cost in its entirety as the default, it does allow for a voluntary contribution. And I've heard some discussion that there are communities out there that actually see this as a significant cost savings and might be willing to step up and contribute something to help offset some of the cost. We get a lot of questions about cost. Excuse me. And one thing that I would say is that we are not the actuaries. We don't have that data. I don't know if it will be forthcoming or not, but we don't have even we don't have the basis to even give a rough estimate of what that cost is. Again, that may be coming at some point. The bill calls for it to be calculated, but we feel like it is an opportunity for people that have the ability to pay something, to put something that might otherwise be in something like a 401k that doesn't define a benefit and is subject to market influences, and secure it into something that is a defined benefit program that would have real value to them in their retirement. So one of the other questions we get asked often, and people may be going, "Oh my God!" Either you've seen this thing and you understand it, or you're looking at it and you're saying this is gobbledygook. This is the chart that the state uses for teachers for them to calculate, in rough terms, their pension. And so what you would do is on the left-hand margin there, you see years of service. You find your years of service. And the top is age. You find your age, you go down. And you can see in the purple area that there are two numbers. One is for people who are in Retirement Plus, and one is for people who are in the regular state retirement system. And most people, I think, will know which one they are in. But let me give you a little bit more detail. So remember this larger thing. We zoomed in so that people could see the details a little better. So in this example, a person who is 55 years of age, who has 29 years of service, and you can see that circled, it's 46.4%. That's their current benefit if they were to retire today. If under this bill they decided that they wanted to get to 80%, there are a couple of different routes they could take, but we just took the simplest one. We added 4 years onto their age, and we added 3 years onto their service. And you can see that one where the lower margin or the lower number is 80%. That's the Retirement Plus number. The number above 64% is the non-Retirement Plus number. So again, these people could purchase an additional 2 years of service, and that's, you see the 68%. That's where they would be. And actually, they could purchase an additional year of service, because we only purchased 4, and be at 71%. But that just gives you an idea of how these charts work. The MTRS has also a pension estimator, and these links should be put up in the chat if they haven't already been. And I would recommend that for folks that think they might find them useful, to go in and just sort of bookmark them right now so that you don't lose them. But this pension estimator is a great tool. You put in your years of service, you put in your age, and some other information, whether you want to have spousal coverage on your pension, which the other chart does not do, and it calculates out what your current pension would be. Or you can also, play with the numbers and see, what does it mean if I add 5 years onto my age? And, for a person who was born in 1965, they'd simply put in that they were born in 1960. And that would provide them with the additional 5 years and see how that works, and they could put in additional years of service if they so desired. The application process is really pretty straightforward for both 2021 and 2022. It allows for an applicant to put in their application 7 days after the local authority has accepted this act. And we really created two sort of identical retirement timelines, one for the summer of 2021 and one for the summer of 2022. And our goal there was to have teachers being able to retire when teachers, first of all, normally retire, but also ideally not disrupting classroom learning with lots of retirements. The one exception that we did put in for that was teachers who are at high risk of COVID, according to the CDC, high risk of becoming seriously ill. Those folks would be eligible to retire anytime between the bill's passage and the end of the sort of window of retirement, which is August 31st of 2022. And the other sort of group that is somewhat different from many other bills is that a teacher who meets this bill, but who submits their application between January 1st, 2021, but prior to the effective date of this act, would be allowed to purchase service under this bill. And again, I want to emphasize that we felt like this was the right and fair thing to do. We don't know where the legislature will come down with any of these specific pieces. So, MTA has retirement consultants who do a terrific job walking people through not this bill, but through the current retirement system. I certainly would strongly recommend that anyone who is interested in retiring with or without this bill, that they, before they do so, that they talk to one of our retirement consultants, because they're a great resource. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to the Director of Government Relations, Eric Nakajima, to talk to you about what you can do to help us gain traction on this bill and our entire legislative package. And I thank you all for the opportunity to address you today.
One of the things we're doing this year that we're very excited about, though, is for this bill and actually our entire agenda, we're doing advocacy in a box, where if you go to massteacher.org legislation, you can see the link right at the top of the page. You can see our entire agenda, as I think Max was talking about earlier. You can find this particular bill. You can see a general overview of it. There's a fact sheet there. There are links to the Senate filed version and to the House filed version, which, as Rep. Doherty mentioned earlier, is a great way to find out who's co-sponsored. And there's also a take action button right there for an action alert that can allow you to click and connect to your legislator and let them know that you want them to sponsor this bill. There's also another link on that same page that allow you to advocate on behalf of our entire agenda. So we'd urge you to go to massteacher.org/legislation, find that link and take action. But beyond that, the tools on the site allow you to share this information with others. So you can go member to member or go to events and connect this information and share it with people so that you can organize within your local, you can organize within your region, you can connect to others so that you can build out a campaign. And that's what we're really excited to be doing, both for this bill and others. But the tools are all there right now. They're live. They're going to be live for all the rest of our agenda shortly. So write your legislator, ask them to co-sponsor the bill. If they are co-sponsoring already, thank them, and then connect to your SDCs and find out if there are other legislators within your region who haven't signed on. Advocate with them, as well as also connect with members you may know in their local and do advocate for them to move forward too. So we're going to get back to you with further actions, meetings, events, but really we've given you a toolkit right there to get at it and have at it. And we're excited to work with you on advocating for this bill and our entire agenda.